This is TNC Movie Nights. We are talking something that I know nothing about. Talking something that Alex is. This is much more of his wheelhouse today, breaking down a little bit of the different roles, but we're sticking with just cinematographer today. We're going to do different episodes like this where we talk about the director's job, the cinematographer, the light crew, all that kind of stuff. Pretty much what I know of a cinematographer is a person who oversees or directs photography and camera work in movie making, especially one who operates the camera. Yeah, I know the definition when I look it up, but that's all I know about a cinematographer. I'm the best way we've explained it before. I'm much more of the popcorn eater at the movies. I like my popcorn films. I just turn my brain off, enjoy myself. Alex likes to dissect.
I'm the pretentious film snob who took two whole classes as a teenager, so I sit there going, I really appreciate the lighting here, like an asshole.
Exactly. So this is going to be a little more of Alex's show today. Those two classes is going to let him shine in this episode. So Alex, if you want to go ahead and take it away. $800 later.
You're right. And one of them was in high school, so like, what the hell are they even teaching me? I went from that to history class where they just told us lies. So like, how much of this is true? I don't know. Let's find out. Also, sorry about the shakiness. I am sitting on a bed right now in North Carolina for just this week, and it's the setup here is very kind of slapped together, so things are kind of shaky. My bad. But cinematographers. So there was something in the definition there that I want to start with, and that is you said they direct the photography, because the other title of a cinematographer is the director of photography, or sometimes shortened to DP. And basically, like, the easiest way to differentiate the director and the director of photography, or the cinematographer, is they do very similar jobs, but they focus on sort of separate things, and they work very closely together, because everything that's happening is being controlled, or I shouldn't say controlled, hello. It's being watched over by these two. They work very close together. The director makes all of the final decisions, basically, and the director will, direct. You should say this. You should be over here. They're more directing the people, not exclusively. Like, I don't want to just say that the director's only job is to tell the actors what to do. But I would say that's probably more of the focus, where the director of photography is more in charge of everything else you see on the screen. All of the background work, all of the lighting, even down to like the angle of the shot, the type of camera they use, the tint they use in the lighting, all of that stuff that's happening outside of the actions of the actor and actresses on the screen. That's what they do. That's what they're in charge of, and that's their whole sort of thing. And they have a whole bunch of crews that help them out with that. It's not just one person doing all this, but they're kind of the top of the pyramid that is lighting and sound and set design and the costume. Well, maybe not costuming department, but like the film location team. All of those guys sort of go under that director of photography thing. So it's a lot of basically everything you see. Like I said, everything that you see on screen is also done on purpose, by the way. There's very little that shows up that wasn't intentionally put there, and that's something that is really fun to try to pick out. And that's something that, like, when you're looking for it, it's really, really fun. And we talked about this a lot. And this is another reason why we wanted to do this episode, is because we've talked about things in the background, or the different ways people can shoot things, or the different framing of the shot, blah, blah, yada, 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 props in the background, all that stuff. So this is kind of what it all culminates to. And I can't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about like The Graduate and the whole dartboard in the background thing.
Yeah, I think it was last week, 4 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago. It's been a lot.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot. And it's because it's a very common thing to do, where you have props in the background that sort of symbolize what's going on in the character's world right now, or things that you might not consciously make note of, but it definitely adds to the tone or the feeling of the movie. So if someone is kind of lost in their ways. You might see sort of an unkept bed, or maybe a curtain hanging off the rails, or a lamp with no lampshade on it, or a dartboard where all of the darts are scattered across randomly. Little things like that that let your mind sort of subconsciously know person might be not having the best time right now. They're a little rough. They're just trying to figure themselves out. Whereas maybe later on in the movie, or earlier on in the movie, if it's sort of a downward spiral thing, maybe the bed was made. Maybe, you know, the curtains are open and the sun is out, and, you know, all the lamps have lampshades on them. I say lamps because I'm looking at a lamp right now. And there's like books on a bookshelf that are neatly arranged, and the dartboard, the grouping is a lot closer together. Little things like that. Keep an eye out for that stuff the next time you're watching a movie. If you ever want to play a little game, go watch a movie that you've seen a lot. Go pick a movie that you just like watching, fun one, doesn't matter what it is. And really, really pay attention to every single motion. Instead of just watching a scene and looking at the person on screen, look around the person. See what's behind them, what's in front of them, what's beside them. Make a note of the lighting that there's going on, all of the props, where they are, if there's any sort of like tint in the lighting. What are we trying to convey here? Everything goes into that. Every tiny little detail, and they're all done intentionally. And it's really fascinating, honestly.
You know, it's something I really want to kind of pay attention a little bit more myself, because, you know, when you mention all that, the only things I can really think of is one of the big ones kind of talked about in Star Wars, in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke, actually, no, I think it's Obi-Wan, you can hear him talking to Yoda about like who's going to be the savior and stuff, and then like there's the light of like green, and then you see like a flash of red kind of thing. And that one I know has been talked about a lot in the Star Wars community, because people talk about it, that you see the red and people just think like, oh, it's about the dark side, but a lot of people will say that what brings the balance to the Force is Darth Vader. That it's actually kind of a hint to the sixth movie, that the red light of who will bring balance, the red light is Darth Vader, because he at the end does. And I thought that was really kind of cool. So very little thing that I can remember when it comes to kind of lighting and cinematography for hinting at things that you know, are kind of a bigger meanings. So it is cool. I definitely want to, like, in the review that we decide to do, I would like to really kind of key in on some of those moments.
Yeah, man. And like I said, I say every single thing, usually. Sometimes it's just a set, and you don't really need to read into everything. You don't want to be like a pretentious sort of middle school English teacher who's like, well, the curtains were blue to symbolize that. Sometimes they just pick blue curtains because they want it to be freaking blue. But most of the things you see had thought put into them, because it's not like you and I just deciding to, like when we're filming the show, there's a lot of stuff behind you because that's your room. There's stuff behind me because I'm in a room. Like this, none of this was done on purpose. This is just how we live our lives. But when you're building a set, you physically have to put everything into that room. And so everything gets thought about, and everything, if you look at a bookshelf, look at the books that are on it. Sometimes that sort of gives you an idea of like, oh, here. And it's not that hard. You don't have to, like, it's not a Where's Waldo thing. Just take a glance, because they want you to see that. If it was done there with the intent of having weight to the decision, you're gonna notice it because they want you to. You might have to sort of like glance around a little bit, but you're not gonna have to pull out a magnifying glass and pause the movie. And I'm looking around you right now, like they would have certain things on the desk behind you, or those Funko Pops would be very specific characters. And I think a great way to think about this is...
Are you sure none of it's on purpose?
You know what? There you go, Mr. Cinematographer. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is you did that on purpose. Like, it's gonna be there. We don't have to talk about it. We don't even have to mention it. But you know what? It's gonna be there, literally staring at you the whole time. And if you take just a little bit of time to notice it, you're like, oh, I see now. A big thing with this, and an easy way to do it, is weirdly enough with Marvel movies. And that's not me trying to say they have the best cinematographers. No shade to them. I'm not saying they have bad ones either. But one thing we always do with Marvel movies is we watch them. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't. But then You can go on the internet and there's just wild theories about things based off of Easter eggs that they found. And
Yeah.
Easter eggs are just, it's a different way of saying, I noticed a thing the cinematographer put in the scene for me. And so you see that, like, I'm thinking of when the first time you see the collector and Howard the Duck is in the background, they didn't accidentally do that. Or
I was gonna
when
say in the Avengers movie when they show the map of like the world of different spots and stuff that things are happening, Wakanda is on there like big circle pinpointed, huge thing for Black Panther. In the first Iron
yeah,
Man movie, there's the Iron Man Captain America's shield. Some things are a little more present because I think he even picks it up and like tosses it aside like, oh, this is junk.
yeah,
But some things are, it's there to be like, ooh, exactly, like as you said, Easter eggs. So
we talked about it with Godzilla Kong too. You had a bunch of files coming up on the screen, and sometimes
yeah,
it's just a flash, sometimes it's mixed amongst things, but you notice it and you're like, oh, that was this. Or even in like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies when they were trying to create Sinister Six, when Harry's going through the files on the computer, you see
yep.
different things, and they're all done on purpose. They're all there intentionally, and we bring attention to them subtly without them being like, did you get it? Did you see it? Huh? Did you? All that sort of stuff. And it's really, really fascinating to intentionally try to spot that stuff. It can be a little distracting if you're trying to watch a new movie. That's why I said go watch a classic that you like. Go watch a movie that you really, really like that is widely considered at least a pretty solid movie. And you'll see so many things, so much in the background. And it's really, really fun to do because you get to play this little game of like, it's like you're being a little detective and someone's leading you, clues to find on purpose. And so you're just like, oh, this is fun. I'm noticing these things that they put in there for me.
Yeah, it's so weird trying to like watch movies in a different way because again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show and plenty of other shows, I just go into movies wanting the plot. And I don't always pay attention to the other things, like the lighting, the Easter eggs, stuff like that. And it is kind of nice because ever since we have started the show, it has kind of opened my eyes a little bit more. And this is why I want to do an episode like this today, because I thought it would be fun to even kind of push me to look at things a little more different. And that's why, again, I'm excited for, we haven't decided yet, but whatever movie we do decide on, that I can really just try to like heavily focus to try to find things maybe I wouldn't have realized the first time watching through.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be really fun. I remember the one of those classes that I was talking about. We watched The Graduate, and that's why I mentioned it before. And we did this really cool way of watching it that sort of forced us to pick up on it. We watched them basically scene by scene, and so we would watch one full scene all the way through, no interruption. And then we would pause it when the scene was over. We would talk about what we thought we saw and why they would have put it there. And then we'd watch it back again after discussing what it was, why we think it's there, what it could mean, why they did this sort of stuff. And obviously, our teacher helped us along, like, hey, did you also notice this thing? And we were like, oh my God, I wonder if it means this. And then we watched it again, having discussed that. And you're like, oh my God, that's just true. And so it's everything, man. If they pan past a sign, it was done on purpose. Like I said, if there's noticeable props in the background, they were done on purpose. The way things are laid out is done on purpose. Even the framing of a shot, from up high, from down low, twisted, shaky cam, all of that, everything is done on purpose. And so if you just sort of remove yourself from that immersive movie experience, which is so much fun to do, to just get lost in a movie and be like, oh, wow. But if you like almost try to study it, it's really fun to try to pick up on as many of those as possible, because then you just, like I said, you feel like a little detective, like, oh, this means that and this means that. And they usually can sort of lead you to a direction that the director and the cinematographer were trying to get you there. And that's why if you have a friend out there who's like really, really good at like predicting the ending to maybe like suspense thrillers or whodunit movies, it's that same sort of thing of like paying attention, because you realize everything is done on purpose. And so let's make note about what this guy said, what this guy did. It's the same with noticing the cinematography. A lot of times they're sort of taking you on a trail of breadcrumbs to lead you to the end, and you can usually pick up on it a little bit sooner than maybe when they do that sort of final reveal, you're like, there it is. That's what I've been waiting for.
And I think it can go a long way to say that a good cinematographer does kind of do something that you mentioned a lot, is be very good at show don't tell. Hiding things in the movies, showing things, or again, just the way lighting can be, to really just push forward a moment, a meaning, a plot point, a character, how big a character could be, stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of different things to definitely see through that, and it's it's difficult at first, I'm sure, but it's nice to try to take a look at movies in a different lighting.
Yeah, totally. And I think we'll probably do something like that this week. We'll find a movie that we both love that's really good, and we can just watch it again. And we've seen it a million times, but then to like not just watch it, but kind of study it. And I don't want to make it sound lame, because it's not lame. It's really fun to just like kind of be like, all right, what are you doing here, and why are you doing it? And so it's really fun. Like I said, I highly recommend doing it to someone. Just go watch your favorite movie, but instead of focusing on what's directly happening, sort of glance around a little, see what they're doing. Make note of the frame of the shot. Make note of some of the lighting in the shot. Is it happening during the daytime, during the nighttime? What's the weather like? What color are the walls? Are there walls? Are they outside? All that stuff goes into it, and we see it across everything. It's not just movies. I mean, when you're designing a house, like, you do things on purpose. I want it this color because it makes you feel this. I want that color because it makes things look bigger. I want this color because this. I want these shades because they go with this and it matches this, and we're doing this. It's that same sort of thing, man. It's just making everything fit and making everything work well together.
Yeah, it's definitely always nice to kind of look at it again, just different ways, because one, it opens your eyes up, but something I've been just kind of thinking this whole time at this point, how does it work with animated films? Is there still a cinematographer for animated films, or is that like an animated director or something like that? Like, how exactly does that kind of coincide?
Yeah, that usually happens. I don't know, like earlier on in the process, I guess I would say, because with the cinematographer, you're on set, you're shooting, you're doing things as they're being filmed. Where with animation, it happens a lot during the creation phase and less of the getting it like shot phase. Because when you're animating, every decision, I should say every, because I mean you can change things, but most of the decisions have already been made. But you can still decide what the lighting is going to look like, what the camera angle is going to be, what's going on in the background, your props, what time of day it is, what kind of scenario or what kind of background we have. Are we inside, outside, time of day, weather? All of that stuff still goes into that same idea. And so, yeah, you could totally do it with animated movies. It becomes a little bit, I don't know. I was gonna say more deliberate, but also maybe not, because it's still the same idea. It's still that same concept of having everything have a purpose. And so it's, the process is a little different, but the result is still pretty much the same.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, and that's what I was kind of curious about, because I wasn't sure if there the different ways to look at it, because I mean, of course, animated films are some of the, I mean, arguably sometimes bigger than live action films. So yeah, I was kind of curious about your thought on that too.
Yeah, man, it's really really fun, and they're. I feel like the cinematographer is a very like criminally underrated role, and it's weird because anytime you're sort of at the top of the pyramid, you have this sort of bloated sense of ego, like I'm the most important, even though like you have a whole team under you who's actually doing the work of your vision or whatever. But when you think of like who runs the show when it comes to filming a movie, most people think, well, the director. Like the director is the one who directs. And you're not wrong. But the director is more so just working with the other teams as well, and a lot of that comes from the cinematographer. And that's why a lot of directors work with the same cinematographers, because they have the same idea of how movies should be shot, similar visionary concepts and all that sort of stuff. Like that's why they mesh pretty well, and you tend to see that directors and cinematographers work together a lot, because because they're like, I know how this person works, I know how that person works, I know they're going to give me what I need, I know how we can work well. And I mean, that it's the same way that if you work well with somebody, you're going to work well with them. But the cinematographer does a lot of stuff that goes sort of unnoticed consciously, because it's not words that are being said to you, or an action that's directly happening. It's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, or not behind the scenes, but a little bit behind the focal point and the way we're viewing it, and not just what we're viewing.
And it's kind of weird to say that sometimes the best things a cinematographer can do are things we don't even notice, or things we don't notice until our 10th watch, or things that have to be pointed out to us. I mean, sometimes those are the best possible things, and I think that's why it is kind of underrated. When people talk about how great the movies are, it's always the actors, directors.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard someone be like, the cinematographer for that movie. I mean, of course, I'm not talking a whole bunch of like movie critics out there, so I mean, maybe it would be different, but your everyday movie person's not going to be talking about the cinematographer for the most part.
Right, not consciously. But then
Yeah.
they'll say stuff like, "Oh, that looked so cool," or "This is my favorite scene," and then if you break down one more layer as to like why, you're like, "Oh, this shot looked really cool. The lighting in this one was really weird," or a whole bunch of stuff, and it all sort of, it's usually at least adjacent to what the cinematographer did, and it's a lot less what you immediately notice and a lot more how it makes you feel or perceive what's actually happening on the screen. Because, and it's, we talked about this with sound too. I mean, you can, there's a lot of the movie watching experience that's not happening like super consciously. Sound, lighting, set design, props, all of that stuff is being registered in your mind when you're watching it, and it's making you feel specific things, and it's making you sort of subtly infer other things, and it's giving you this sense of mood in the scene, or it's making you discover maybe a little bit more about a character, but none of it's said out loud. And so none of it is that sort of like, oh yeah, the pen is blue because they said the pen is blue sort of stuff. But it all has an effect on how you perceive what's actually on the screen.
I think another big thing to it is, though, I don't think everyone knows about the cinematographer. Because I'll be very honest today, prior to this, even today, just looking into cinematography, anytime I would think to myself, like, oh, that scene looks so cool, my thought process would go, okay, it's cool because the director said to do it that way. Then I would go to, outside of him, it was because of the camera guy, because he put the camera in that direction. I would have never thought that there's someone else that's like a director who's actually deciding all that kind of stuff. So I think that's
Yeah.
why, I mean, there's people like me out there who maybe just don't know, so.
But the thing about that is you're still right. The director still wanted it done that way and said to do it that way, and the person behind the camera still shot it that way. But a lot of the decision to do that came through the cinematographer, or the director of photography, because they're the ones that went and set the set. They're the ones that sort of framed the shot before they got to set. They're the ones that spoke with the director on what the director's vision was, and then actually, made it physical. And so a lot of that is, again, it's weird because, like I said, when you're at the top of the pyramid, you always have this inflated sense of like what you actually did, because most of the time you're just sort of like deferring to your teams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also, like, they do a very important thing that goes kind of unnoticed on purpose, and so it's weird to both be a little maybe inflated in your sense of accomplishments, but also sort of underrated, because most of the stuff you're doing, if you're doing it well, is not something that people are going to talk about attributing to you.
Yeah.
But I do be like that sometimes.
Yeah, totally fair. I think that's probably gonna do it for us today.
Yeah.
It was a fun episode. Again, it's nice to kind of break out of the comfort zone for myself, talk about things that I don't fully understand, and kind of have a better idea. But if anyone out there, film critic mentality, or just someone like myself, you're more of just someone who watches to have fun, let us know what you thought of today's episode. What movies are out there, that maybe even scenes of movies that are like, wow, I never thought about the cinematography, but that's why it's so cool. Let us know in the comments. We do appreciate it. But
Yeah, for
Alex,
sure.
where can the people find us?
Well, Brandon, the people can find us at thenerdchambers.com. They can also find us on the YouTubes and all the socials at TNC Movie Nights. But if you want to one-stop shop us, thenerdchambers.com. That's where everything gets posted. That's the central hub that then branches out to all of the internet space. So just save yourself the time. Go to thenerdchambers.com. And while you're there, read again so I can wear the show hoodie. Hey, look, there's 3 penguins on screen right now. What?
What?
But yeah, that was a long-winded way to say there's a link to our merch shop there. And
Yeah, you know.
you can buy our shirts. Anything else, Brandon, or send us home?
Yeah, we'll see you. This is Wednesday. You're seeing the episode. Reviews coming out Saturdays again now. So see you Saturday for the review. See you next time.